Hello everyone, I am CS Das. I hope you all are doing good. So this is the time for filing of our income tax return, whether for business, whether for salaried person, whether for pensioners. So now we all are going to file our income tax return. So with this, I would like to discuss a very important section, which is section 56, subsection 2, clause 10 of the Income Tax Act 1961. And this section comes under the head income from other source. So without wasting any time, so let's discuss what section 56 subsection 2 clause 10 says. It says any sum of money or any immovable property received without consideration or without consideration would be taxable in the hand of the recipient. So let us discuss it in detail. First, any sum of money, any sum of money received by a recipient from any person, and if that sum exceeds rupees 50,000, then it would be taxable in the hands of the recipient. Okay, it is not just excess of 50,000, it is a total amount which is received in excess of 50,000. For example, if I received rupees 55,000, which is obviously greater than 50,000, so here the gap or the difference 5,000 is not taxable. The total 55,000 would be taxable. So this is the case of any sum which is received in excess of 50,000, where the aggregate amount would be taxable in the hand of the recipient. So are there any exclusion? Yes, there are exclusion, but we will be discussing about it later on. Next, we come with immovable property being land or building or both. So if any immovable property being land or building or both transferred by a transferor to a transferee without consideration or inadequate consideration, then that situation or that circumstances would fall under section 56 subsection 2 clause 10. So what it says? If the immovable property received without consideration, that is, no consideration has been given, whereas the property has been received, तो टैक्स क्या होगा, टैक्सेबिलिटी क्या होगा? So in that case, the stamp duty value, the stamp duty value, if exceeds rupees 50,000, then it would be taxable in the hand of the recipient. I am talking about where the immovable property, whether it is being land or building or both, received without consideration, that is, no consideration has been paid, in excess of rupees 50,000, then in excess of 50,000 means the stamp duty. I'm talking about the stamp duty value. Because when there is no consideration, then how we will arrive at that value? That is, we need to arrive at the stamp duty value. Then the stamp duty value, if it exceeds rupees 50,000 of that property, that is land or building, then it would be taxable in the hand of the recipient. So now a question arises, what will happen if it is received with inadequate consideration? So what is inadequate consideration? Inadequate consideration simply means where the stamp duty value, where the stamp duty value is or differs with the consideration being paid for the acquisition of the land or building or both. So the difference between, if the difference between the stamp duty value and the consideration and the value of the consideration, if the difference between the stamp duty value and the consideration exceeds rupees exceeds the higher of the two. What is higher of the two? Higher of rupees 50,000 or 10% of the consideration. So consideration what? Consideration paid or received? Obviously consideration paid. That is, if I am acquiring a land or building or both. If I am acquiring this with a consideration which is which differs from the stamp duty value, with the difference being higher of the 50,000 rupees and or 10% of the consideration. तो यहाँ पे हम लोग क्या बोलना चाह रहे हैं, यहाँ पे बोलना चाह रहे हैं ये जो डिफरेंस हो रहा है ना, ये जो स्टैम्प ड्यूटी वैल्यू में और जो कंसिडरेशन हमने पे किया, अगर इन दोनों का जो गैप है, इन दोनों का जो डिफरेंस है, अगर ये डिफरेंस हायर होता है, दो केस जैसे 50,000 और 10% ऑफ द कंसिडरेशन, इन दोनों में से जो हायर होगा उससे अगर हायर हुआ, वो गैप, किसका गैप, जो स्टैम्प ड्यूटी वैल्यू और जो वैल्यू ऑफ द कंसिडरेशन पेड, इन दोनों का जो डिफरेंस है ये हायर है. दिस इज हायर in respect of the higher of rupees 50,000 or 10% of the consideration. एक एग्जांपल से समझ से, say the value of the stamp duty value of the property being land is rupees 50 lakh and the consideration being paid is 20 lakh. So what is the difference? 30 lakh. Section 56 clearly states if the difference between the stamp duty value and the consideration exceeds the higher of rupees 50,000 or 10% of the consideration. So what is 10% of the consideration? That is 20 lakh का 10% हो गया 2 lakh. So 2 lakh and 50,000, whichever is higher? 2 lakh is higher. So now the gap between stamp duty value and the value of consideration paid, the difference is 30 lakh, which is higher than 1 lakh. So in that case, the recipient need to pay tax on the stamp duty value, and the difference between the stamp duty value and the value of the consideration, that gap, that in this case the difference would be taxable in the hand of the recipient. So this is about immovable property. So now immovable property being land or building. Now if any residential unit, being transferred by the transferor to the transferee, यहाँ पे क्या हो रहा है, रेसिडेंशियल यूनिट ट्रांसफर किया जा रहा है, रेसिडेंशियल यूनिट, और ये रेसिडेंशियल यूनिट is held as stock in trade by the transferor. तो in that case taxability point of view से क्या होगा, the difference between the stamp duty value and the value of the consideration, if it exceeds rupees 50,000 or 20% of the consideration. In this case it is 20%. If it is, the difference is higher of 50,000 or 20% of the consideration, then the difference between the stamp duty value and the value of the consideration would be taxable in the hand of the recipient. However, this benefit of higher concessional rate of 10% or 20%, this benefit of 10% and 20% would be available in case where property has been transferred between 12th November 2020 and 30th up to 30th June 2021, and this transfer is being made as a first hand transfer. This transfer has been made as a first hand transfer. So these are the cases where this benefit would be available. So is there any exclusion from section 56 subsection 2 clause 10 in respect of taxability? Yes, there are certain exclusion. Like if any sum of money received from any relative, received in the occasion of marriage, received from a fund established under section 10 subsection 23C, in respect of any fund received from any institution registered under section 12AA, any amount received in account of inheritance or will. So in that case, any amount received in excess of 50,000, I am talking about cash component. Now, any amount received greater than 50,000 would not be taxable. And again, in case of any immovable property, any value which exceeds the which is received without consideration or inadequate consideration, it will be outside the purview of section 56 subsection 2 clause 10. तो here relatives में कौन कौन आता है? Relatives में spouse, brother, sister, spouse of brother or sister, parents of spouse, in a lineal ascendant or lineal descendant, and in case of Hindu undivided family, any member. So relative में ये लोग आते हैं. तो relative को अगर कुछ मैं पैसा दे रहा हूँ 50,000 या फिर कुछ भी अमाउंट दे रहा हूँ 50,000 ज़्यादा दे रहा हूँ आउटसाइड द पर्व्यू ऑफ सेक्शन 56 प्रॉपर्टी दे रहा हूँ चाहे वो मूवेबल हो इमूवेबल हो 50,000 के ऊपर आउटसाइड द पर्व्यू ऑफ सेक्शन 56 तो ये कुछ एक्सक्लूजन है. So we have talked about immovable property. Now I would be discussing about movable property. तो movable property में क्या होगा? Movable property में if the fair value, if the property has been received, if the movable property has been received without consideration, then if the fair value exceeds rupees 50,000, then it will be taxable in the hand of the recipient. In case it is received inadequate consideration with inadequate consideration, then the difference between the fair market value of the movable asset and the consideration paid. If it exceeds rupees 50,000, then it will be taxable in the hand of the recipient. So this is the case of movable property. So we talked about land and building. We talked about immovable property. We talked about movable property. प्रॉपर्टी में क्या क्या आएगा? प्रॉपर्टी में व्हाट इज प्रॉपर्टी? प्रॉपर्टी में कैपिटल एसेट्स आ जाएगा, ज्वेलरी आएगा, आर्कियोलॉजिकल कलेक्शंस आएगा, पेंटिंग्स, ड्राइंग्स, बुलियन और एनी आर्टिफैक्ट्स. This will be come under the definition of property. So this is all about section 56 subsection 2 clause 10. I hope you liked my video, and if you have any query or if you have any questions regarding this topic, this discussion, then please drop a comment so that I will be able to answer all your queries. Thank you. Have a nice day.